Toot and Orbeline would like to welcome you to the second month of Taking the Essence. It's an ongoing series that investigates a new major theme of Buddhist philosophy each month. This month, the month of February, we will come to understand the importance of developing and maintaining a sense of open awareness, both on and off the cushion. Thank you, Eddie. Eddie's been around since 1997, teaching Buddhism. We are definitely in good hands. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shayla, and welcome along this afternoon to the this new course that we've been asking for the next 4 weeks or so. So I'll just give a little brief sort of introduction, and then we'll start off with the meditation and motivation. So my name is Eddie. As Shayla said, I've been here like, was it 7 years, something like that. And I've basically been doing this program, Discovering Buddhism. And as you're probably all aware, when we're engaged in Buddhist practice, what we're really doing is studying the mind. So sometimes Buddhism is seen as a religion, but really I think it's more of a philosophy or psychology. But you can take whichever one is helpful to you. And this set of 4 teachings is really based around the module, how to meditate. So we'll see how we can use our practice, as Shayla said, on the cushion and off the cushion. So I think that's enough. Let's set our motivation, and we'll say a few prayers together, and then we'll begin the class. So just get comfortable in your seat. This means basically to make sure that your shoulders are relaxed and your back is straight. You can place your hands wherever you like. And if you want to, you can even close your eyes. If your eyes are closed or open, I'd like you to continue breathing normally and naturally. And while you are inhaling and exhaling, become aware of any movements that the body makes as you breathe in and you breathe out. As you continue to breathe in and out, notice the feeling tone that's associated with the breath and the movements that take place. While you continue to breathe normally and naturally, your body will be settling down and your mind will be becoming more peaceful and calm. So that you find it very easy to imagine that the Buddha appears in the space in front of you. His body is made of golden light, and he is surrounded by your spiritual mentors, teachers of the lineage, other Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. meditational deities, and so forth. And surrounding you are all sentient beings. And we are all facing the refuge field of the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. Now ask yourself why you're here. What do you wish to do? And then recollect that everyone has a natural wish to avoid suffering. Everyone equally wishes to be happy, and yet everyone lacks genuine happiness. Now, the causes that prevent genuine happiness can be eliminated, and the potential for that genuine happiness to arise actually abides equally within all of us. I think that one of the purposes for being here is to abandon and eliminate everything that hinders your genuine happiness. The genuine happiness meaning enlightenment itself, the greatest form of happiness. You can abandon everything that hinders that and actualize everything that supports genuine happiness. Well, that potential exists within each and every one of us. I think that you wish to develop your compassion and your wisdom and every other skill you have to their fullest potential, so that you can help others do the same. And then to do that, we're going to rely on others who have already done that. And those people, those beings are the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas who are in front of us and above us. So let's take refuge in them. You'll see there's a prayer on the screen if you don't know this prayer. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And in response to this wish that we have, lights and nectar stream from the Buddha's heart, and they wash over you, and they remove every obstacle to your potential and empower the potential. And you think of others who lack compassion, love, joy, and equanimity. I think that you're going to help others develop those four immeasurable thoughts. And with this decision, once again, lights and nectars move across from the Buddha's heart, washing over you. Again, empowering and strengthening the potential to establish all beings in these four immeasurable states. And now you see yourself prostrating before the refuge field. You make offerings, and you confess all the misdeeds and unskillful behaviors. You rejoice in that abandonment and in the good deeds of others. You make requests that the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas always remain to teach beings. And you dedicate all of your actions towards the spiritual path. And you see yourself about to make an offering of the mandala to the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas. So with this offering, it's to decrease any miserliness and greed and becomes a cause for future resources. Furthermore, it stops any clinging that we have to our body, our conceptions of true existence, and the clinging to the merit to be ours alone. I think that all those forms of clinging are vanished in the offering of this mandala. So say along with me. This ground, anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine that this is a Buddha field and offered. May all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnaratayami. Mandala is released, and the Buddha accepts this offering and smiles at us with delight. And we look into the eyes of the Buddha, and we feel accepted and at ease. And then an emanation leaves from the heart of the Buddha, moves through space and comes to abide above the crown of your head. He's facing in the same direction you are. This emanation enters your forehead, just above your eyebrows, and descends to the level of your heart, whereby it begins to expand, filling your body with light and nectars. And these lights and nectars pour out through the pores of your skin, and they fill the 10 directions of space. And they establish every being within space to be within the enlightened state. And the sense of inner joy arising through this, your establishment of beings into the state of enlightenment. And then the state of calmness and peacefulness is interrupted by the thought that I'm not actually helping others while I'm in this state. And this is just on the level of imagination. And with that, all the lights and nectars begin to withdraw from the 10 directions of space, re-entering your heart, and you feel yourself embodied, sitting on your chair in front of your screen. You're breathing normally and naturally. And you realize that you're engaging in these classes to bring about a fully enlightened state for yourself so that you can help others do the same thing. We're engaging in the practice spoken about in these DB modules to develop our wisdom and our compassion and all of our skills to help others. And we're breathing in deeply. Exhale through the mouth and allow your attention to come back into the room and into your body and relax. So this is the, like I said, the first of 4 teachings in a 4-week course, focused on the idea that it's possible to cultivate awareness in daily life. So every class here is going to be divided into different sections which will hold the topic of our lesson. There'll be some brief meditations that go on also, and we'll also leave time for questions. And finally, at the very end, there'll be a very brief review. And my hope for you is to come away from this course with the idea that you know what mindfulness and introspective alertness actually are, and you know how to apply them wherever you are. So we're looking at what mindfulness is and what introspective awareness is. Now, the English word mindfulness is often used to translate a Pali term found in the early Buddhist teachings called sati, spelled S-A-T-I. And as far as we know, the Buddha's meaning or definition of this word sati was really straightforward. It just means to keep something in mind. That is to continually remember the object you're aiming to keep your attention on. So when we talk about the mindfulness of breath, for instance, in meditations, we're talking about remembering the breath, maintaining your awareness that's on the breath. Other meanings associated with the word mindfulness are being alert, ardent, intent, and experiencing with comprehension. So to actually know what the mind is doing, that it's actually on the object you've placed it on. So discussed in both Pali and Sanskrit traditions, the mental factors of mindfulness and introspective awareness, which also goes by the name vigilance. And there's a new term that's being used lately called meta-awareness or metacognition. They're all related back to this word, introspective awareness. Now, these two together primarily function to what's important in the moment. Now, that could be our meditation object. It could be the movement of your body. It could be the reason for engaging in an action, and so forth. So from a Buddhist perspective, what they're doing, mindfulness and introspective awareness, is working together to keep the mind in virtue and to redirect it back to virtue when it leaves it. So whenever the mind is to stray to non-virtue, we're to recognize that and then bring it back to virtue. In this way, we can prevent different sufferings that we could experience, and our path becomes more certain and progressive. Now, mindfulness and introspective awareness also enable us to work for the benefit of others. So what I'm going to do very, very shortly is to talk about mindfulness first. Then I'll speak about introspective awareness. And I'll introduce a couple of meditations so that we can actually see how they work together. You can actually notice your own mindfulness and be able to judge how introspective awareness is working. Now, the resources I've used are these books here, plus teachings by my own teacher, Khyentse Rinpoche. And also, there's a couple of books I haven't got here, but one is by Geshe Rabden, about the mind, and another is Geshe Tashi Tsering from London. He also wrote a book called Buddhist Psychology. They're also very good. And those two other books I've mentioned, Geshe Rabden's book, Geshe Tashi Tsering's book, and these two books here, Science and Philosophy and Buddhism. Now, those four books altogether are really about these mental factors, mindfulness and introspection or vigilance. Whereas the other books, especially the top two, are both commentaries on the Bodhisattva's way of life, the Nectar of Manjushri Speech and the Way of Awakening. They've got terrific chapters in there on mindfulness and vigilance. And they really show you how to work with them and what you're actually doing with them. But like I said, the other two books tell you what they are, their nature, their aspects and so forth, into the nitty-gritty of it. The others, how to work with it in your sessions and in your daily life. The two books on the very end here, Following the Buddha's Footsteps and the Foundation of Buddhist Practice, they're my real go-to books. They explain the Buddhist path in language that's really accessible and very easy to understand. And those two books sort of are a combination of what I've just spoken of. So they also get to the nitty-gritty, but they also show you how you use them together. And I found these books all very useful. Let's now talk about how you actually cause mindfulness to arise. So this is a quote from the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. It is from this chapter called Vigilance, and it's verse 30. It says here, owing to accompanying their teacher, following their guru's instructions and out of fear, those fortunate ones who practice with respect easily generate mindfulness. It's nice, isn't it? So it's actually basically saying to generate mindfulness to become, I should say, first of all, we've already got mindfulness, right? It's not something we haven't got, we've already got it. But to strengthen it and develop it and use it well on the spiritual path, we need help. And the best sort of help you can have is to have a teacher, companionship with a virtuous friend. Then we need to listen closely to the instructions taught by them and support that listening with reading and thinking. And when you do that, to have a sense of shame and fear. Of what? Of being reproached by others. So it's like, this is the sort of thing we say, I'm not going to be saying this, but people might think, Dalma, Eddie, Miffy and Sue, they're all Buddhist practitioners. But boy, I've heard them say this, I've seen them do that. And if that is what a Buddhist is, I'm not so sure about that. So we don't even want that to happen to us, right? And we don't want other people to be thinking, man, I've seen Buddhists, they're a bit messed up. That's what we need to be, have a sense of shame and fear about.
Eddie, I'm going to jump in here and say every time I go to our local supermarket, because I have pink hair and all the checkout ladies know I'm a Buddhist, I just have to be on my 100% best behavior at all times, no matter what, because like I got to represent.
Yeah. That's right. That's how I feel about me too, being here as a tutor. Like something you can aware. If you mess this up by some bad behavior that comes to the attention of everybody, it's not just me that suffers. It's the whole center. It's the whole organization. It's Buddhism as a whole. So this is good sort of fear to have. It holds you back from being silly. So we need that sort of fear and sense of shame. And finally, of course, is we have relationships with teachers. So we need to respect the advice that they're giving to us. We really think about, when I first came to the center and this word respect came up, I was sort of a bit hesitant straight away. It was like, why? Why should why do I need to respect this fellow? Because my idea of respect was what was taught to me by my parents, which is you respect elders. But I've come across a lot of people that were older than me and were more foolish than me. But when I found out you respect the teacher for the kindness, now that struck a chord. But the kindness of explaining how you can be a better person, decrease your own suffering. And they come every week. They're always there for you. I mean, we all have, if you have good experiences with authentic teachers, you'll know what I mean. You will respect them. And we respect them for the kindness of this teaching. So here, when they're teaching us mindfulness and vigilance, which is sort of really the foundation of the path, as I hope you'll see. Now we should naturally just put our hands together and be very, very grateful that we have people that help us in this way. This sort of brings about the rising of our mindfulness. But what is mindfulness? So let's look at that now. So here I've got a couple of quite straightforward definitions, and they're both saying basically the same thing. So the first thing is what mindfulness it does or is, it's a mental factor that prevents the mind from forgetting the familiar thing. It's very nice and simple, isn't it? I mean, it's sort of easy to not forget. It's that simple. To prevent the mind from forgetting a familiar thing. Or otherwise saying, being able to attend continuously to a familiar object without forgetfulness or distraction. So an example of this, for instance, would be one's parents and family. So your parents and family are a familiar thing to you, aren't they? And if you were to think of them, it's like you're not forgetting them. And while your mind is on your parents and family, you're not distracted. So while you hold them in your awareness, that's mindfulness. That's being mindful of an object that you're familiar with. You haven't forgotten them and you're not being distracted. Which leads us to a little bit more in-depth look at this now. So here we have the distinguishing features. In other words, the qualities of mindfulness, the three qualities. The object must be a familiar thing. You cannot have mindfulness without a familiar object. The quality of this mindfulness, in other words, its aspect is not forgetting. And the function of the mindfulness is to not be distracted. again, another example that we've come up with. So you can have your car keys, right? They are a familiar object to you. You know what they are. And whenever you go out the door to open your car, you don't forget them. And the function of the key is to open the door of your car and put it in to drive it. Now, I'm putting these really ordinary sort of examples across because we're going to take these ordinary examples and then move them up to the mind.
And Eddie, also with these ordinary examples, I'm sure we've all experienced absolute frustration when we can't find our keys or where we have lost our mindfulness, and how the flow-on effects are just devastating.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I'm going to say now a little thing about the function of mindfulness. So in a nutshell, it's to prevent distraction to other objects. But it's also said in the Compendium of Ascertainments, what function does mindfulness have? And the answer is here, it functions to recall the memory of what one has thought, done, and said a long time ago. So from the point of recalling things thought of, actions done, and words spoken long ago, it functions to prevent movement of the mind away from that object. So for example, right? So we've all heard teachings from our teacher. Yeah. So while we listened, we became familiar with what they were speaking about. Can you recollect now? Because if you didn't forget, you'd go, oh, that's an aspect of mindfulness. But then if you think, now what did Geshe say? I went to his teachings a little while ago about vigilance. What was the first verse he spoke about? What was that first verse? If you go like this. So then, the aspect of you've forgotten. So we don't have mindfulness now. You were familiar that he did say something, but you've forgotten. Right? So this is one of the biggest things. I remember one time Geshe saying, it's not that we don't know, it's that we forget.
And Eddie, that's happened to me when I've been so enthusiastic about a Geshe teaching and said, oh, wasn't it fantastic? And the person said, oh, so what did Geshe teach on? And I just draw a blank.
Yeah, that's right.
Unless I've written it down, it's much easier to recall then.
And
if I just sit and enjoy it.
And I also remember that so I used to write everything down too. And then one day Geshe said this thing of, I hope all your Dharma's not in the book and stuck in your back pocket and you sit on it. Like, it never actually went into the mind. It went into a book and then it got forgotten. So I'm sure that happens to all of us, right? We're really present at the time, but then when we come out and then somebody asks us, or if we can review it, we're unable to. So mindfulness also means memory. It means calling to mind. It also means recollection. And this recollection can be of many different things. Possibly the most important one is the precepts. So when we become Buddhists, we take vows, and we take a refuge vow that we won't go to any other object and make that our ultimate refuge object. We also took precepts to how to behave towards the Dharma and the Sangha and the Buddha. So then the question is, do you remember what they are? And then you might find, like I've forgotten. Many of us have taken bodhisattva vows. Well, we might be familiar with the idea, there's 18 root vows. Yeah, I know that. And so what's the first one? We're lost. So it takes a bit of work to have this mental factor, mindfulness, working well. Right? So it's got this thing of the function is to not be distracted, and the aspect is remembering. So what we find probably for most of us is that so much goes on in our life from day to day that we're continuously distracted, which contributes to us forgetting. And our familiarity with our Dharma, with our practice and the trainings, is just like in the metaphor they use this idea that Tibetans love to drink barley beer, but the barley floats on top of the beer. And that's like our recollection, isn't it? It's just on the top of the mind, but it hasn't got any depth. It's never sunk in. So we'll find, at least I can tell you now, I find that with myself, that it takes a lot of effort to actually get it a bit deeper than just on the surface of the mind.
So Eddie, you're going to tell us about the picture?
Yeah, well, this picture has to do with the second and third verses of the Vigilance chapter in the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, where they talk about the wild elephant, right? There's that wild elephant that can destroy property and take lives. But they're saying that's all it can do, that's all it can do. But the wild elephant of the mind, if that's let loose, it can destroy this life for you and all future lives. It can throw you into the hellish realms. However, if you can bind that elephant crazy mind of yours to an object of virtue, which is civilized by the post, and the binding by the rope, meaning mindfulness, none of that need happen. All sufferings can be prevented with mindfulness and introspective alertness. But to do it, you've got to bind the mind with it to something virtuous. Now, mindfulness, as some of you might remember a few years back, when Lama Zopa said mindfulness, he must have been hearing a lot of people talking about mindfulness, right? And he's going, mindfulness, even a thief requires mindfulness. That's right. Even a thief has to become familiar with the layout and what he's going to get. He's going to be not forget anything in there and not be distracted. So I want to introduce you to the idea of non-virtuous mindfulness, because it's possible to have that. So here we've got three people, and these three people are all actors in a television series that Miffy and I have just watched called The Victim. And the person in the middle, what she remembers is the loss of her son, the death of her son, and the anger towards the perpetrator. So 15 years have passed since the death of her son, and she is angry all the time. That's what she is mindful of. She never forgets her anger towards the perpetrator of the death of her child. This man looking down at her, he cannot forget his unskillful behavior in the past. It weighs heavily on him. He never forgets what he's done. And this man over here is staring at this woman. They're both staring at her. He knows what she's done, and he's not forgetting that either. But each thing they're focused on is a negative quality of mind. It causes them all suffering. It makes all of them victims.
Yeah, so the one on the right, Eddie, he's the detective. So he's kind of got a mixed one of always being mindful of trying to solve the case, but also it's on a, you know, a negative thing, and it's all informed by hatred and disgust.
Yeah. And so it's not forgetting its object, but in this case, the object's a negative one. But so you might know people like this yourself. You might know people who've had a bad experience in life and they've never forgotten. Well, that's mindfulness placed on something negative.
And it becomes,
produces suffering for them. It makes life very difficult to be with them. Now,
so it becomes all-encompassing obsession, like it becomes your identity.
Well, people will identify you with that quality and say, you know, like, she's crazy, or man, she's an angry person, or man, you know, the sky is so depressing to be around. And if you go like why? It's because this mental factor of mindfulness is focused upon something negative, non-virtuous, and this has impacted their life in such a way that they're very uncomfortable to be around. And they themselves are suffering immensely. So just point that out to you, and as Lama Zopa Rinpoche says, even a thief requires mindfulness. So mindfulness itself is not necessarily a virtue, especially it just means, you know, remembering, not forgetting, not being distracted. Now, as I was saying before, you know, like we all remember different things. There are things that we don't forget, and there are things that are when they're important to us, we're not distracted. So we already, like I said, we have mindfulness. What's required of us, I think, is to develop it more fully and use it more with greater awareness. Because really all these are tools, mental tools. So I'd like to introduce you to now is what they call the divisions of mindfulness, because there are different ways you can use the mindfulness and different objects that you can place it on. So first of all, mindfulness, we can relate it back to oneself, ourselves. Right? And when we talk about ourselves, of course, we're made up of the body, and we have speech, and we have a mind. Right? So we can look at the body in terms of the three destructive behaviors we should avoid, and the three constructive actions we should engage in. You know, so we know in terms of the body, we should not kill human beings, and we should do our very best not to take the life intention of any being. In terms of, and in fact, we should actually try to protect the lives of others. Right? So we've got something to abandon. We need to remember that, and we've got something to do. So we should not forget what we should abandon and what we should do. And if we find ourselves killing mosquitoes very quickly, or killing a cockroach or something like that, we should understand, oh my God, I forgot. Like we've lost our mindfulness. We've got distracted by a thought about the creature. And it's the same thing with speech. We know there are 4 forms of speech we should abandon and 4 we need to adopt. So this is what we mean by applying mindfulness. In terms of the mind, we know, well, we want to abandon malice, envy, and wrong views. And we want to adopt their opposites. In terms of the what we say, the Bodhisattva's way of life, the practices within the Mahayana, we've got to go, wow, what do I need to remember here? And it might be, the thing might be, others are more important than you. Put yourself second here. Try and help the other. So we can use this idea of mindfulness in relationship to ourselves, which we should be doing. So here, our body, speech, and mind, and the different vows and promises we've made as we've engaged in the teachings of the Buddha. You know, how do the vows relate to each of these aspects of self, body, speech, and mind?
And Eddie, also just in a secular life, like if you have your professional code of conduct and things, like we all have to be mindful of body, speech, and mind in our job.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, you know, sometimes, of course, we do get distracted and then we know we've lost our mindfulness. Other times we forget and we know we've lost our mindfulness. But we can't
like
lose
the
our
office.
mindfulness if the object is not familiar to us.
The office Christmas party is often a time when people lose their mindfulness of body, speech, and mind.
Yep, that's right. Yep. Now, the other object, of course, is in terms of time. So mindfulness about the past. So, for instance, here, when we come to do our last practice at night, right, it said, okay, we need to look back over the day, which is already gone, and go, what unskillful things did I do with my body, speech, and mind? I need to recollect those now because I'm going to purify them now. I'm going to lay down that burden. Then is the present. It's like, what's going on with my body, speech, and mind right now? What's it doing? In terms of the mind, is it neutral right now? Is there anything really going on? Am I reflecting on the past? Am I projecting into the future? Or am I present? Then our future. So, you know, we're aiming for Buddhahood. Our long-term future goal is that. We need to remind ourselves of that, be mindful of that, and not let us slip, our behaviors slip into actions that are just concerned with this life. On the way to this goal called Buddhahood, we need to actually put an end to the causes of our own suffering by developing paths. Right? So if we don't have a path right now, then it's going to happen in the future. So we need to remind ourselves of that and think that this future path that we're trying to attain will be highly dependent upon my ability to concentrate on to have a calm and peaceful mind. It will also be dependent upon, you know, the right view and the right thoughts and so forth. We'll also have mindfulness towards our efforts. And here we've got what's called new effort and old effort. And these terms here really come up in Mahamudra and in the development of calm abiding. So until we have the, you know, as you know, when you go through the calm abiding stages, there are 9 stages. And until you attain the 4th stage, the 4th mental abiding, you're always going to forget the object. And so we need to re-establish the object. So that's what they call new mindfulness. Just reminding yourself again, oh, I've forgotten. I'll put it back on the object. But after the 4th stage, we don't forget. Our mindfulness is really good now. The only thing is that it's the subtle stuff comes up now. So we've got our old mindfulness, but we need to be also aware that although we have it, there's still sort of mental sinking, mental excitement. And that only goes away like on the 8th mental abiding. And finally, in terms of developing itself, you'll see that you can have mindfulness with movement and mindfulness without movement. Once again, this sort of relates to the practices of calm abiding, where the mind is, like I said, being agitated and not agitated. So you can sort of subtle excitement, subtle dullness. There you've got movement until you get it with no movement. And you get that sort of equanimous state.
So, Eddie, do you mean with movement, mental movement or physical movement?
No, mental movement.
Mental.
And it's subtle. So it's like you are holding the object, but it's a little dull. Or you can even, you'll find this yourself, sometimes when you're sitting there breathing and you're calm, but just beneath the surface of the mind, it's like it's bubbling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I know that happens a lot with me, that's why I can say it. Now there's another type of mindfulness too called gross and subtle. And that's not, I haven't put that up, just no room. So subtle and gross. So gross mindfulness is the mindfulness that we have at present. We're trying to remember things. We're trying not to be distracted or to be forgetful. So we've got that now. That's gross mindfulness, and we're trying to use it. Subtle mindfulness is being able to use that type of mind, not forgetting, not being distracted, not being forgetful in dreams. Okay? So I know this myself. Sometimes I've had lucid dreams, and what do? I start to fly. So I forget to apply it to Dharma. It's like, wow, I've got the state, I'm familiar with it, I know this place, but I can't put it on a Dharma topic. And there are ways to use Dharma in dream. No, but because I haven't familiarized myself with it while I'm awake, I don't do it when I'm in a dream. So, so I can't complete the practice of mindfulness in relationship to the Dharma. Now, there are all sorts of benefits of having mindfulness and developing it. So I just want to mention a few of them. So the first of all, it's wonderful thing is that you remember your precepts. You remember what to do and not to do. Mindfulness, of course, when you know what not to do, don't do it. So that's what can prevent being non-virtuous. It'll remember the meditation object. It's like the elephant, it's stuck to the pole. The rope of mindfulness takes the elephant mind tightly to the peg. The peg is the object. Prevents distraction and restlessness. It remembers what has been done and what's not been done. And finally, when I put this picture up the guard, it safeguards what's important. But like I said before, you've got to sort of know what's important before you can safeguard it. And that comes about through familiarity with the Dharma and the teachings of our guru and what you read and contemplate on. Now there are heaps and heaps of other benefits also. But this is the one, this next slide I'm going to put up. So I've been trying to memorize this next verse that's coming up. And why that is, it's because it summarizes the practice of mindfulness and vigilance. Now this verse I'll show you very shortly comes from the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. It's the very first verse in chapter 5 called Vigilance. And so Dalma, you would have come across this. Sue, you would have come across this a couple of weeks ago when Khyentse Rinpoche gave the teaching. So this is the verse, right? Those who wish to guard their practice should very attentively guard their minds. For those who do not guard their minds will be unable to guard their practice. This is, believe me, like I've been trying to memorize this over the last 3 days and getting in. So when Khyentse Rinpoche says, ask us a question about it, I go, okay, this is the whole summary of those 22 verses. This is it. You get this one down, it encompasses everything. But as I've been doing it, boy, the import of it. Like, so if you say, I talk to her about this and go, oh my God, this verse. So it says, those who wish to guard their practice. So what is the practice? Yeah, well, the practice is called Dharma, isn't it? The practice of Dharma. What's Dharma? Yeah, well, that holds you back from suffering and produces all the good outcomes. Then we can look at the Dharma of the small scope, the middle scope, and the great scope. And that's the practice.
So, Eddie, often when we think about practice, our first thought is sitting formally on the cushion, but it's a lot more than that, isn't it? It's like life, the universe, and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, so before with those old mindfulness and new mindfulness and this movement to no movement, that's actually on the cushion. This is like, we take teachings from the master, we read and study, we reflect, and we live our lives. So life is not separate from practice. Life is just the part of practice, probably the bigger part of practice.
And I remember Rinpoche saying about, say, if you're a director at a Dharma center, that it's the equivalent of doing a 3-month Vajrasattva retreat, or, so the practice, there's these huge equivalencies of, volunteering in Dharma centers.
Well,
that it is very much
yourself and Dharma too. When you're a volunteer at a Dharma center, you've got to be on your best game. Yeah. And that's what we want. We have to, if we take volunteers at a center, it's respect the Dharma, respect your teaching, respect sentient beings. Let's do the best we can. But to do that, you have to attentively guard your mind. You've got to sort of be aware all the time. How am I thinking? How am I speaking? What's my body doing? So like at this center, remember those, what were those things with you that you made up from like the doctor thing? Scripts, right? So each person had a script. Don't just make it up, there's a script. Memorize the script, right? Or if you can't memorize it, keep it with you. When the new person comes to the room, what do you do?
Delma knows about the script.
Smile. You got a face thing, you put a smile on your face. You reach out, hello, welcome. Are you new here? Those are the words. Right? But it's all coming out of the mind, isn't it? It's like, oh, new person. And if you're not new, then people come and you say, hi, Delma, how are you? Hi, Shayla. Straight away, it's like, we're happy to see you. We remember these things. But you only remember if you like to guard the mind. Like you guard the mind from how should you not behave? Well, don't, when the person comes in, please don't have a growly face. Don't have a black face. Don't speak harshly to them.
Which can be quite a challenge, because if you're really, really stressed or there's a deadline looming or something like that, that's the time when we lose our mindfulness of how we're interacting with others.
So which brings this place, which comes to go, okay, so when you are really stressed, what do you do in response to that? So you have to know something to do in response. I mean, in other words, you've got to have be something that you're familiar with. I am stressed right now, but what should I do in the face of stress? You go, come back to the breath. Breathe mindfully. Right? Start counting. Slow everything down. Remind myself of why I'm here, and it's wonderful that I'm here. A human being with a leisure and opportunity to engage in Dharma. It's fantastic. And I'm helping others. Right? Drop all the negative, come back to the positive. Start. I think it's a fantastic verse. And each night now before I go to bed, I'm saying it. When I wake up in the morning, I say it again. Because I thought, by the time Khyentse Rinpoche is going to do the rest of this Vigilance chapter, if he asks us any questions about, like, what have we been talking about, like it should be locked in. Right? And not only that, memorized, but actually, doing it at home, doing it wherever you are, like guarding your mind. Using mindfulness, using what you are familiar with, not forgetting it, not being distracted. So now, that'll do for mindfulness. Do you guys have anything you'd like to ask?
Eddie, just stop the screen share so you can see people.
Okay, I can see some people.
I was thinking, and I had a question actually about when you were talking about not behaving well or having a fault and doing something really bad during the day, just not having mindfulness and, you know, being stressed or whatever. And it came to me that probably the best thing to do is, as soon as you can, perhaps when you get home and you've got a bit more headspace or that, just go, oh, geez, I regret that. Actually bring it back to mind and actually go, well, I've done it. I can't take it back. But now I can actually just think that, yep, I regret doing it. I know I can do purification practices. If I do that and do it well, I can lay that down and not just have to keep going back to that negative thought all the time.
That's right, Lama.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. It's like being mindful that there's a way to diminish the harm of this unskillful act. And the most important thing you can do is, as you've said, is regret it immediately. And if there's somebody in front of you that you've actually harmed, immediately say sorry. But yeah, regret's the major thing. And then just, try to make a promise, okay, I've done it, but I'm going to do better. Like, at least this unskillful behavior has reminded me of how to behave. Yep, and then that night we can lay it down more completely. Yep, thanks, Lama. Okay, well, I'll move on if anybody doesn't have anything else to offer or ask about. So the next bit we're going to come to now is...
I have a question. Yep.
Sure. Yep.
Thank you. Okay, with being mindful of the breath,
Yes.
to me, there are two different ways of doing that. One of which is I simply observe the breath. The other way is to willfully breathe. And that draws my attention in a better way than just simply observing. Is that okay to do? So it's a willful, kind of consciously tell myself to breathe in and consciously tell myself to breathe out.
Yeah. Yes,
Yep.
I have to do that. And the other one is this, like when you're observing breath, they're both aspects of mindfulness. You both have, as your object, the mind. It's just that you're getting at it slightly differently. Two
Okay.
different ways.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, I have a question. It's hard to kind of put into words. And when I was looking at your picture of the elephant, I've been trying to figure out for the longest time, because I keep hearing the term monkey mind. I don't have a
Sure.
monkey mind. I have an elephant mind, and it is all over the place, all the time, destroying everything. And the doing practice every day has been very helpful. I'm still trying to rein in some of the more destructive behaviors. I have, everybody thinks they have ADHD. I have I think I have a more destructive form of it, that I just have complete inability to focus a lot of the time. And it has, and on the other hand, I have, it's kind of like I can hyper focus, but it's usually on the wrong thing.
Okay.
And I don't realize it when I'm doing it. And
Yep.
it's very destructive, especially because I'm new to this state and people here do not react to me the way I'm used to. So it's very unique. And I'm just kind of wondering what your insights would be on that, and some practices is how to really, if you're in an emergency situation where that elephant is just totally bulldozed something important, what do you do?
What do you normally do? What normally brings you back to sanity? Christine, did you hear?
Sorry.
I'm sorry. Did you hear me say, what do you normally do? What brings you back to some form of sanity?
Well, normally what I do is I'm mentally run around in circles flailing.
Yeah.
And I try to focus. Sometimes the breathing helps, but sometimes my first impulse, if I can, is to run as far as I can into some kind of wilderness or natural area and stay there until I calm the hell down.
Okay, good. Yeah. So basically, when you're in the throes of the mad elephant, there's very little you can do that's positive against it. The force of it's overwhelming. It's too much. So what we've got to do is like to calm down in some way. So we try to bring this, what we like call like a really negative, heavy mind to a neutral state. That neutral state is usually through, for you, like I say, is just to escape the situation and get into nature. Or as you've been trying to do, through coming back to the breath. Because the breath is a neutral object and you're always breathing. And if you put it on the breath, you can't have the two things happening at the same time. So what I often do with these sort of situations is imagining, for instance, that like I'm locked in a room or in a prison cell, I can't run off to nature. I'm actually stuck here in the room. So what can I do now? Yeah, okay, well, I can't go to nature because I'm in the room. The only object left for me now is my breath. So can I just focus now on the way the breath feels as I'm being trampled by the elephant, as I'm angry. So that'll take you right away from the anger story and all that stuff and put you onto something else, which will be the breath. And you can say, like, where is the breath? For instance, where is the breath right now? So just asking that question will remove you from the elephant. Like, where is the breath in my body right now? Where am I feeling it? And wherever you can find it, just place your mind there and then breathe and just feel the breath. Just go with the breath. You're in neutral ground now. So stay in the neutral ground for a little while, and then you got to go, okay, now, I don't want to come out of here and think about that situation again because the elephant's going to get me. So what else can I draw upon? So that means some other object that you are already familiar with, another object that you've been mindful of, that will work against that anger and actually put you in a better and more positive state. So that might be, like in terms of like when the elephant's not trampling you, just sort of ask yourself, so what really sets me off? What is said or done that makes me feel this way, behave this way? So you go, okay, so maybe it's somebody saying this and that. And you go, okay, what do I think about that? What do I think about that? Because that little thinking thing, the elephant sits on you after that. Because that's, if you can find out what that is and reverse it, turn it around, because that's the wrong thought, but that's the view that brings all the rest of the afflictive emotion and power down on you. And we go, okay, now I've identified the object. One of the simplest ways of talking about this is that I just got something I didn't want. Yeah, welcome to life.
So Eddie, that's like you said you've gone into the neutral state,
Yeah.
and then this sounds like an analysis, but is there a way that we can, like, I just remember with the horrendous arguments I used to have with my mother, that after I'd kind of calmed down a little bit, she'd show me this picture of Lama Yeshe just smiling, beaming, from ear to ear. And that was such a beautiful, warm feeling. I couldn't help but actually get into a more positive zone. And that was a good starting point, because just coming from that neutral one, it's so easy to fall back again to negative analysis.
Well, that's what I've tried to point out here, right? Like once you get to the neutral, you can go back to the negative very quickly. So you've got to replace it with something else. So in your case, your mother showed you the picture of Lama Yeshe. So who have I just been talking to with? Is that you, Christine? The first put up the query?
No, it's Lorraine. I elephant stomped right into it.
Okay, right. So,
I have a thought. This is Christine. May I contribute?
Sure.
Working in the field of mental health and disabilities, I know for my own personal elephant brain sometimes, and I go back and forth between elephant and monkey.
Yeah, that's right.
And sometimes body scans can be very helpful in recognizing where you're at and what your body is doing, and taking a period of time. For me, I can do a body scan in about a minute and a half, but it took a long time to learn how to do it that quickly.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. So this is, when we talk about coming back to the breath as a neutral object, it's like the breath in the body. What's it feel like? We're trying to get out of the head and get into something much more solid, embodied. Yeah, so thank you for offering that, Christine, because that's the idea here, is to get out of the head and into something more grounded. And the breath is to do that. It's like, I'm going to say, where is the breath? Well, it's got to be in the body. It's a physical phenomenon, so it's in the body. Just like they're trying to feel that, or else finding, like with what Miffy's mum done, some object that always makes you happy. And so once you get to the neutral, move straight. You're in the neutral ground now. Now move, take that object that always makes you happy. Think of that. Place your mind there. So especially if it's your teacher, the Lama, His Holiness, or Lama Zopa, or some object you aspire to, some way of being. And then just remind yourself, yes, that's what I want to be. That's what, I can be that.
Because it also something like that, if you think, what would His Holiness say, or what would Lama Zopa Rinpoche say, or that even if they had something to say about the situation, it would be far kinder than how I'm framing it.
Oh, for sure.
It's Christine.
The other thing I was going to say, the other thing is that we can just accept that we're pretty crazy sometimes, but it's not our deepest nature. It's like, hey, we're all samsaric beings. Like another, this is the teaching. Rabina says it all the time. Like we're all crazy. It's just in different degrees, but it's not our deepest nature. Underneath all that is like a fine person. Just, like I say, the elephant nature of the mind overcame me for this moment, or the monkey nature that overcame me. But basically, I'm all right. It's just when the monkeys and the elephants come along, I'm in trouble, and so is everyone else. So now, I want to have a look now at this next factor, because we're going to run out of time shortly, called introspection. So let's have a look at that now. So introspection, this is what it is. It means to examine again and yet again the state and actions of your body and your mind. That's it. Nice and simple. This alone defines, in brief, the maintenance of watchful introspection. Yeah. So
this is like preempting.
For example, like when we meditate on the body or the mind, like an object, let's make it like the body scan. Right? So we brought the mind back, we're focused upon the body and how it feels. Like it's on the body, that's the mindfulness. You're going to scan the body, that's the mindfulness. The introspection is like, well, how does it actually feel? What's going on here and there? Is this part tight? Is this where the wind up is? Is this where the heaviness is? It knows all that. It notices it all. And the mind stays going up, down, on the body. This introspection, it's examining it. How's the mind settled on it? What's there? Vigilant introspection is a part of what they call intelligence, the intelligence of the mind. And it's working with the mindfulness, which is really associated with wisdom. Introspection with intelligence, they're working together. And these are the types of intelligence we can have, this type of introspection. So that which accompanies right views So there are a number of, probably the most important, there's a couple of really important right views. One is just how to be conventional right view, right? How to behave, what not to do, what to do, basically karma. The other right view is remember that every karma is empty of intrinsic existence. It exists in mere name. So we tie them both together, the wisdom aspect and the method aspect. It's like, if you have a horrific experience, for instance, if you can turn your intelligence just to look at it, not to follow, okay, so, you describe something, it's so heavy, I feel so like crushed. Then the mind goes, yeah, how, where? It starts to do this examination. And what you find is you don't find what you thought was there. So this is this introspective awareness. It also supports reliable analytical wisdom. So in this case, this introspection is really associated with wisdom. And the next one is with serenity, calm abiding. So this, of course, is like when we're breathing, for instance, if we're doing, trying to do calm abiding on the breath, deep meditative absorption on the breath. When we breathe in, for instance, so we're on the breath, we've got it, we breathe in. Sorry, suppose we're beginners. Actually, we could do this right now. Let's do it. Yeah? So suppose you're a beginner, we're all beginners, and I'm going to count the breath. So before I breathe in, I'm going to say 1. So I'm going to breathe in, I'm going to exhale, and the next time I breathe in, I'm going to say like 2, and then 3. So let's do it for 3 breaths, okay? Go. Okay. We've done 3 breaths. Did everybody remember to say the number before they did the in-breath? Because if you forgot, you've lost your mindfulness. But if you could remember, that's what you're meant to do, right? I was meant to say 1, then you're meant to breathe in and become aware, know it, and come down. Was everybody able to do that? Okay. Now here's where introspection plays its part. When you said 1, did the 1 stop and then the breath go up? Or did the 1 go all the way up? Introspection will know that. When you breathe in after saying 1, was that in-breath shorter or longer than the exhalation? What was the feeling of that in-breath as you breathed in 1 on the up breath?
I said 1 and then took a breath and then inhaled and then, slow in.
Yep, that's right. So we have the mindfulness that knows the number and the introspection that knows after I'd said the number, all the way up, the number was left down the bottom, was forgotten about, it was just going up. Often for me, when I say 1, it goes like 1, all the way up. And I drop it at the top and go down to the bottom. Right? So it's a little different for me and for Shayla. So I know that. I go, actually, is that right? I mean, it does help keep my mind on the mind. But can I just say 1 and then go up? So introspection notices those differences.
Eddie, is this also like what Lorraine was saying about like the willful breathing of being
that's right. That's
aware
right. So
at the beginning?
Mindfulness is both on breathing. Introspection knows, I breathe mindfully, or I do it like this. This is how I'm breathing. Now, there are many, many benefits of this. So I'm just going to put up a few now. One is you know what's happening, which is great. You want to know what's happening. You also want to know how it's happening, when it's happening. So all these things support the wisdom. Introspection supports accurate knowledge of what you're doing, how you're speaking, or when you're speaking, what you said, when you said it, how it affects yourself, how it affects others.
So Eddie, this is really crucial, especially in terms of times of emotional turmoil, because that's when we lose our introspection, isn't it? And other people go, don't be so angry, and you're going, I'm not angry.
Yeah. So we lose our mindfulness and our introspection. And of these two, mindfulness is the more important, because mindfulness helps to develop introspection, because you're on the object. Mindfulness makes introspection stronger. And as before, it knows the quality of your awareness. Yeah. So for instance, introspection will notice that you've lost the object. That recalls mindfulness comes in, right? Put it back on the object.
So Eddie, in Western terminology, is this like metacognition?
Yep, that's what they often call it now. That's what they're calling it, meta-awareness, metacognition. It's a wider awareness of another, what you're sort of doing already. Now here's this lovely quote, right? Again from Shantideva's Bodhisattva's Way of Life. All of you who would protect your minds, maintain your mindfulness and introspection, guard them both at cost of life and limb. I join my hands beseeching you. That really gets my heart. I join my hands beseeching you. So once again, this is from Arya Shantideva. Now to develop mindfulness and vigilant introspection or meta-awareness, we need to rely upon a teacher and so forth, and the teachings, and have respect for that. But really, as well as that, we need to be relaxed about this. So always checking your mind, not making it like too tight. You want to be relaxed so that it overcomes the tension. And the relaxation corresponds to the roots of the tree. It's your deepest roots. It grounds you. So be grounded in relaxation. And here's the mindfulness, which is the trunk of the tree. And this is, of course, to overcome distraction to the objects that we don't want to go near while we have mindfulness on one object. And the next thing is this vigilance or clarity, which is all the branches and leaves of the tree. And this is to overcome the dullness and the excitation. It knows what the quality of the mind, the quality of our speech. So this clarity or vigilance or meta-awareness, it's sort of like watching over. It says, what was sorry, I forgot your name, the other student who mentioned, my mind just sort of watches over the mind.
So Eddie, so it's interesting that you said that the relaxation is the roots of it, because often we can feel, say, quite guilty about having to rest, or think that relaxation is kind of like an indulgence and that it's not the really important thing. But here you're saying it's actually the roots of everything. Yeah. The ground.
The ground. So yeah, as you said, in the Galupa tradition, there's nothing, very, very little said about this. Why? Basically, because all the lamas and those people are already relaxed. We're not. We're living in the West, going to work, got families, doing heaps of things on computers. Right? So we've got to like come home to the body, relax the body, relax the mind, and then you can place your mind on the objects you wish to. So again, from the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, Shantideva says, Therefore, I will take in hand and well protect this mind of mine. If I can't guard and discipline the mind, what use to me are many disciplines? So here's these two guys, mindfulness and vigilance, introspection, and the guys in the middle to represent the mind. You've got two big guardians. And yet there's no one else other than ourselves that knows what's going on within this continuum of body and mind, is there? We are the final arbiters. Doesn't matter. As much as the teachers wish to help us, as much as we read and study, it really all comes back to us. It's our responsibility to guard the mind. Because the wild elephants come out of the wild mind. The tamed elephants come out of the mind that's restrained with mindfulness and vigilance, tied to the pole of virtue. So in many ways, it's the simplest discipline. It's the best discipline. And all the others, if you just have all these precepts and vows and things, what use are they to you if you can't do this, if you can't use these two mental factors? So today's takeaway is this. You basically know what mindfulness and introspective awareness are, their purpose, function, and benefits. So remember, with mindfulness, you have to have those three aspects. And the focal object is, it's got to be something that you are familiar with. You cannot apply it without an object you're familiar with. The focus is on that object without forgetting. That's the aspect, non-forgetfulness. And the function is not to be distracted. When it comes to introspective awareness, it's just like scanning over and over. Is it doing what I said it to do or not? What's the quality of that? Examining the state of one's body, speech, and mind. So when I use the word repeatedly, it doesn't mean give yourself time to relax. Right? Like it should be like, you placed it on them, now relax. You are relaxed. You don't need to apply introspection now. Relax. Right? If you start going, you notice, the mind is starting now to think of something, some future object, your introspection should pick it up and go, future thoughts. Just relax. Relax again. So in summary, we've identified mindfulness, so we know of its nature, aspect, and function, and we know why it's beneficial. And we've done the same with vigilant introspection, also called meta-awareness, vigilance, even called awareness sometimes. Please try that on something simple like breathing. Some of us have daily sadhana practices to do. We're becoming familiar with that. See if you can just put it down and do the outline. So what's the first thing I do? What's the second thing I do? What's the third thing I do? Okay. Then, like normally the first thing you do is take refuge in generator mind of enlightenment. When you do it, are you just saying that? Are you just on it? Or has the mind sort of gone off somewhere? Okay. Finish and go, yep, that was good. I was mindful of that prayer. I know what it means. There are 4 immeasurables. They're just play. Okay, so we are at the end. So I just want to dedicate the virtues of this. So let's have a look there.
Eddie, just see if there's any last questions too.
Sure. Okay, so basically, in the week, read whatever you can about mindfulness and vigilance. Now, you can get all sorts of teachings on this from different traditions, so just be aware of that. And remember, it's really mindfulness, just remembering. Vigilance is basically checking, scanning. There are a couple of teachings online. I didn't want to put a specific one here. I've had a look at them, but see if it suits you. Find one that will suit you. Next week, we'll look at it, try and use mindfulness and vigilance against anger. The angry elephant. Okay. So, is there anything anybody would finally like to ask or offer? Okay, okay, Christine, what would you like to say?
I have a question. So, in going back into the two types of understanding, Venerable Robina uses the phrase the compassion wing and the wisdom wing, I think is how she describes it.
Yep.
How do those fit into this?
Well, you need to be mindful. So mindfulness would say, you know what compassion is, and you know what wisdom is. You are familiar with what wisdom is. You know you are familiar with what compassion is. With introspective awareness, you know that when you're doing the compassion work, it's method, conventional truths. If you're over here on the wisdom side, you'll know it's about how the wing of compassion lacks inherent existence. It's a dependent arising. So the mindfulness and alertness need to be applied to both sides, to both wings.
And would that be in the same sitting, or would that be just in general?
That's in general and in the same sitting.
Thank you very much, Eddie. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, David, see you later. Well, are there any final things anybody would like to ask? If not, we'll dedicate. Okie dokie. I'll come back to this. Whoopsie. So, bring our hands together. Let's thinking of all of our teachers and all the great kindness they've extended to us, and how everything that we're doing exists in their name. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme dual body Chitta, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline but increase forevermore. Such that as long as state endures, as long as space endures, as long as there are beings to be found, may we too continually likewise to remain to drive away the sorrows of the world. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Great to have you here. It's been